It's time for Recipe of the Day.
Pozole, how I love you. Let me count the ways. Oh my God, this soup or stew is so delicious. It's a hearty Mexican dish that has some different variations, but always includes hominy. Okay, what is hominy? Hominy is whole kernels of dried corn that have been treated with an alkaline solution to remove the hull and the germ. That process is called nixtamalization, and it actually puffs up the kernels and gives them a chewy texture. It's really earthy, kind of nutty. One of my taste testers for this recipe said the texture reminded her of soft chickpeas. Actually, when she first had it, she thought that they were soft chickpeas in the soup. And I told her, no, those are hominy. And so that's kind of the texture. They kind of look like chickpeas too. You can get the hominy dried or canned, but if you get it dried, you have to boil it, cook it, do all kinds of things to it, which is not in the spirit of this very quick version of pozole that I'm telling you about today. So instead, I recommend that you get the canned hominy, which should be available in most grocery stores, and you just need to drain it and give it a rinse, and it is ready to use. It just needs to be simmered for a short time to soften a little bit. So all versions of pozole have hominy in them, and then there's just different versions based on whether they use chicken or pork, and then whether they are a green pozole verde or a rojo, a red pozole. The one that I'm doing today is the red, and so it uses red chilies. The green version would use tomatillos and green chilies. Now, I'm going to tell you that the traditional version of pozole uses dried chilies that you simmer or soak and then use. But like I said, I'm doing a quicker version of this soup here. And so I'm actually subbing in for those dried chilies, some chipotles and adobo, canned green chilies, and some chili powder. But after I tell you how to make this recipe, I am going to kind of back up and tell you what to do if you want to use the dried chilies. Similarly, for this recipe, I'm using already cooked pork. I actually got some pulled pork at the grocery store already cooked, and I used that, which made it super, super quick. So I'm going to tell you how to make this recipe using that. You could, of course, substitute leftover cooked pork of any kind or leftover cooked chicken or even rotisserie chicken. Any of those are going to work, just some kind of cooked meat. But then, like with the chilies, after I tell you how to make the soup, I'm going to kind of back up and tell you what to do if you want to actually make this with the uncooked pork, beautiful pork shoulder that you're going to slow cook in the broth. That is the option. It just adds time. So I'm going to tell you the quick version of this soup, and then I'm going to tell you the sort of more traditional, longer version. And what else? I'm just going to say the best part of this soup. Oh, no. There are so many best parts of this soup. I'm not sure that I can really rank them, but one of my many favorite parts of this soup is that it is usually served with a variety of toppings. So it's one of those dishes that you can make for a group, and then everybody personalizes their own and gets a dinner that they really, really love. So there's toppings involved, and I will tell you about those as well. Okay, let's jump into making this quick and easy version of a red pozole. Okay, you're going to start by heating a tablespoon of cooking oil, whatever you like to use, in a large pot over medium heat. And then you're adding a small onion that you've chopped up and cook and stir until softened, just a few minutes. Then add 3 cloves of minced garlic and cook for 30 seconds. Then you're adding some chili pepper and oregano right to the oil in the pot to bloom those spices. It just extracts extra flavor from them when they get to be in fat for a moment. So it's 2 tablespoons of chili powder and a teaspoon of dried oregano. If you have Mexican oregano, use that. If not, regular oregano that just is labeled oregano is going to be fine. And you're just going to cook and stir that for about 30 to 60 seconds. Then you're getting out a can of that chipotle pepper in adobo, and you're going to get 1 pepper from in there, and you're going to chop it up very finely and add that in with your chili powder and oregano. I should say you probably should have already chopped up that chipotle before you added the onions to the pot even, so you have it ready to go, because you don't want that chili powder and oregano to be in that pot for too long without adding other things. They will start to scorch and burn, okay? So you add in that minced chipotle along with a teaspoon of the sauce from the can and a tablespoon of tomato paste, and then just cook and stir that for about another minute. You're kind of like caramelizing those flavors just a little bit. Then add a 4-ounce can of chopped green chilies. You just add the whole can of that. You don't drain it or anything, along with 3 cups of broth. I use chicken broth here, but you could use whatever kind of broth, vegetable broth. You could probably even use beef broth or a stock or homemade, anything like that. You just want something with flavor. You're also putting a bay leaf in there and a teaspoon of salt. Give it a stir, increase the heat up to high and bring it to a simmer. And at that point, you're stirring in the hominy. The can is going to say white hominy. It's a 25-ounce can. You drain it and give it a rinse and then add that in. And then you're going to simmer it uncovered for about 10 minutes. It's just softening the hominy and getting it just a little creamy in the middle. Really nice, but it does need that time. Okay. At that point, you're going to stir in your cooked meat. So 1 pound of cooked pork or chicken, cubed or shredded. It's about 3 cups is what you want. So you add that in and then you just stir for another 5 to 10 minutes to kind of heat it through and let the meat get all those flavors into it. Then take out the bay leaf, give it a taste, add more salt if you'd like, and then you're ladling it into bowls. You can do a drizzle of lime juice here or serve with lime wedges, and then you have all those toppings ready that people can add or you can add for them. Traditional toppings include shredded cabbage, thinly sliced radishes. I love the radishes on here. I love radishes. So when I have a reason to use them in something, I love it because I buy them and then they're in the fridge and I snack on them. I could just buy them when I don't have a reason to, but I don't always think of it. So it's kind of that like, oh, the radishes are in this recipe. I'm going to be able to snack on them this week. Okay. So also just some diced white onion or green onion, some chopped cilantro. You could do avocado. You could do chopped tomato. You could kind of do any of your like favorite taco toppings. And then quite often they are served with warm, soft corn or flour tortillas. You can kind of like tear them and dip them in the soup, like when you're having bread with soup, or you can make like little tacos from some of the meat and some of the toppings in there, kind of like drippy, wet, delicious tacos. So dip or make tacos, your choice there. But yeah, the broth is rich and flavorful. The hominy is really interesting and has a kind of unique texture, really meaty, good soup, and then all those fresh toppings, delicious. Okay, now I said that I would tell you what to do if you wanted to use the traditional dried chilies here. You usually want 1 to 2 of the chilies per cup of broth. So in this recipe, you'd be doing sort of 4 to 8 chilies. I guess I didn't say at the end there that you can add more broth if you'd like, especially if you're going to do the dried chilies or actually cook the meat in the soup, which I'm going to tell you about in a second as well. Then you might need to add more broth because more of it is evaporating away, you know? So for this recipe, you'd be using some dried guajillo chilies or ancho chilies. And like I said, 1 to 2 chilies per cup of broth. It's going to be like 4 to 8. What you do is remove the stems and seeds from the dried chilies and put them into a large pot with just enough water to cover them. Bring it to a boil over high heat and then reduce the heat down to a simmer and cook, stirring occasionally until they're hydrated and softened. It's going to be about 15 to 20 minutes. Then take that off the heat, scoop 1 cup of the liquid from the pot that the chilies are simmering in into a blender, strain the chilies and add those to the water in the blender. And then you're going to blend them really good, puree until smooth, and then strain them through a fine mesh sieve just in case there's any like bigger, harder pieces into your pot of soup. You're adding them when you would have added the green chilies, but you omit the green chilies, omit the chipotles and adobo, and omit the chili powder too. These are going to take the place of all of that. Now, if you wanted to have meat freshly cooked for this soup instead of using the leftover meat, you have a few options. You can actually use some pulled pork, like you can make pulled pork. I'm going to link to my favorite oven pulled pork recipe. It's perfect for this. I'll also link to how to cook roast pork in the Instant Pot. So you could like have a piece of pork, cook it in either the pulled pork method or the Instant Pot, and then shred or cut that up. You would add that at the same time that I added the already cooked meat because you've already cooked it, right? The alternative to that is to cook the meat in the broth. So what you'd be doing is getting a pound, maybe a little bit more than a pound and a third of uncooked pork butt or shoulder, and you cut it into 1-inch pieces. You can trim off any fat and discard it if there's extra fat on there. And then you're going to put that cubed meat into the pot when you add the broth and all the other ingredients, everything else that we added except for the toppings, of course, and don't add the hominy at this point either. So everything but the hominy and the toppings go into the pot with the pork. So follow the same steps that we did. So you're going to saute the onion, and then you're going to add the garlic to that and the oregano, and I guess not the chili powder if you are doing the dried chilies, but yes, the chili powder if you're not, and the tomato paste and the chipotles and adobo if you're using that. So you're going to do all those steps, right? But then crucially, don't add the hominy when it says to add the hominy. Instead, you're going to add this uncooked pork, and you're going to bring it up to a boil and then reduce it down to a simmer and cook until it is nice and tender. It's going to take 40 minutes to an hour. And then you'll stir in the hominy, and you're going to cook that for 15 to 20 minutes in there, just until nice and creamy soft in the center. So then the pork is getting kind of like an hour and 15 minutes total cooking time in that broth. So those are how you do the sort of more traditional variations to make this like right from scratch, right from the beginning. Although I guess I didn't tell you how to cook hominy. I will leave that alone since the canned stuff is so available, so good, and so easy. But you can do the dried chilies. You can do the uncooked pork added to the broth, and all the instructions are there in the recipe for you, both the recipe that I walked you through, the quick version, and these variations to do the fuller version. Those are all in the link. So I will link to this pozole recipe in the show notes for this podcast episode, or you can head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and get it there. Everything there is arranged by date, so it's helpful to know that today is April 9th of 2026. And I will just say that if you make this recipe and love it, or any of the recipes from either of my websites, if you make them and love them, please go back and leave a comment and a 5-star rating. That helps other people know that you liked it, makes them want to give it a try. It also helps other people find my recipes because they see those 5-star ratings when they're searching for recipes on Google, and they're more likely to click on mine, and then more people get to try it. So yes, please leave a comment and a 5-star rating. I really appreciate it. I'm Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, cookfor2.us, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great day. Let's get cooking.